Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Artenders. This is Danny Lavelle. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Mac Welch.
That is me.
And today we'll be discussing a sort of supernatural adventure game. We haven't delved into games at all. This is our first one. And today it is going to be a game titled OXENFREE, developed and published by Night School Studio. Essentially, it is an adventure game where you control the character of Alex. And you go to this secluded island with your 4 other friends to cap off your junior year, heading to senior year of high school. But everything goes quickly downhill. And how you sort of play this game is your dialogue choices sort of affect the narrative. And we're definitely going to delve into that and delve into the sort of storytelling elements of that. But today, I want to do something a little bit different, and I am actually going to lead with my sizzle serve.
Yeah, I get it. So you were saying that your sizzle serve is what was the exact quote? As hot as the Sahara?
I quoted my sizzle serve to be as hot as the Sahara, because what I'm going to say for my sizzle serve right now is, although Oxenfree is not the most important thing we have consumed, I think it is the best thing that we have consumed.
Wow. Now you are quite partial to video games in general.
Yes, and so for me, I think a big reason why I enjoy video games artistically more so, at least now, compared to back then, is because how you receive the story narratively is so different for the most part compared to other people, right? And I think this game is an incredible example. So to explain, you get sort of different endings in this game, right? And different things can happen to the characters in this game depending on how you approach this game. There are plenty of games that are sort of a rigid storytelling. However, you can still discover things for yourself in different ways compared to other people. And there are plenty of adventure games. Adventure games are usually the best thing for that. As things to discover. But the reason why I think this is the best one is the sort of, I mean, the pacing helps. The pacing definitely helps, but the constant surprise that this story has. And if you don't have any sort of preconceived notion or preconceived disposition, or even if you don't know anything about the story, that's the best way to play this game.
Which we didn't.
Yes, we both didn't. I only knew that, hey, this game looks pretty good. It's acclaimed fairly well. I knew that there was going to be some sort of supernatural element, but to what sort of capacity, I had no idea. And I think actually one of the best things about this game is the voice acting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What about, because this is also something that you want to potentially go into at some point in your life. Like, that was part of your reason for going to acting school, was voice acting. So what was your assessment as a voice actor of these voice acting performances?
It seemed like they were all in the room together, how they were constantly playing off of one another, and how each character, or I mean really each actor, was feeding into the other lines, and they were actually listening to what the other person had to say. There's so many times in animation or games, right, because voice recording sessions are all done with separate scheduling, right? Let's say I'm in a recording session, right? But it's just going to be me and the director. And if everybody else has their lines recorded already, they'll feed me those lines, and that's going to exceptionally help. But let's say you're the first person to do a recording session, you have really nothing to go off of. So you're just kind of shooting at thin air, and you really only have the director and whoever else is there to sort of inform you on what to do. I don't know the process behind the recording for this game, but it felt like they were constantly in the room together and constantly feeding off of each other, and the acting shows because of it. What did you think of that?
Yeah, there's this really annoying thing that happens whenever two actors have a set of dialogue and one of their lines has an ellipses or has a dash after their last word, and they have to wait for the other person to cut them off because that's how the dialogue is written. But if the other actor doesn't totally cut them off in time, like there's this weird pause of like, do I just keep making up words until you cut me off, or what's gonna happen? Or maybe I'll start saying the last words a little slower so that you can cut me off. Like it's always super awkward, especially pacing wise. But this, I'm not sure if, like I said, I'm not sure if it was they were in the same room, if it was editing. It sounds like some of it was editing, but because you have to decide what your character is going to say in the middle of conversation, they do a really, really, really good job of, no matter when you pick what you're going to say, what your character's going to say, it feels very natural. And it feels like a really, really fluid conversation. And that was impressive.
Yes, and there are some times that when you pick a dialogue option, right, and you always play the game as Alex, so let's just say that. So when Alex has like a dialogue option, you pick that option, occasionally she will cut the other person off, or she will wait until they're finished speaking and then say her piece.
Yeah,
which
is cool.
It just depends, but it makes sense for each dialogue option. It's how this game is constructed in this sort of dialogue point of view is brilliantly done. And we haven't, and we're just talking about the acting right now. We haven't even tackled the actual storytelling and what you do throughout this game. Well, what were your, aside from the acting, what was your big first impression of this game doing a full playthrough? Because you don't play games that often. So what did you think?
So I have always viewed video games and game apps as very different things.
Right.
So like I've never really seen an app get into a layout quite like this, where like with the basically joysticks that you're using on the screen, and also the way the map is laid out on the screen. It's not really close up, like you're very far away, but you can see the whole setting,
like area.
Yeah. And so that was kind of something to adjust to, because at first I was expecting to be able to see them, and then I was like, wait, I need to take a step back and like stop trying to like look so hard and just listen, because like their acting is done through their listening, through the listening.
Yeah.
And I just need to play the game like it's less like it's something like an action game, and more like it is a journey game where it's a lot more about the going places than it is about the doing at the places.
100%. I will also say that this, if you're gonna play this game, I would not actually recommend playing it on a phone because the screen is so small. I didn't think that was gonna be an issue prior.
Totally agree.
But at one point when I first started the game, I considered just getting it for like my computer. Just so I could get a bigger screen and see more of those smaller character expressions that are happening.
I would have to agree. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was about to say a similar thing. And then my other big thing that was a weird thing to adjust to is that I just haven't actually spent money on apps in a, like, maybe even ever, but in a really long time. So it was weird to like put money into a game app and then also like mid game have to like actually like pay for the game, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like that was a weird experience, because I was like, oh shit, like I couldn't help but be mad, and then I was like, wait a second, this is more of a video game than an app, and I need to remember that, and I'm willing to spend money on video games, so I need to like let this go because this is a normal thing, you know?
Yeah.
What was your, like, the second that you finished the game, like once the story was over, what was the very first thing that you did in that moment? What was the first thing you said?
So for those listening, how the game ends, and we're skipping over so much because we're going right to the ending in this discussion. But these characters are stuck in a time loop on this island because of ghosts from a sunken Navy ship, and so they're keeping the five main characters in a time loop. And so even if they get off the island and continue their life, all of a sudden, Alex is giving you a sort of rundown on what happens afterwards, and then you hear some like glitching happen. She's like, okay, but now I'm going to this island with my best friend Ren, and I have to bring this weird guy Jonas. And you're like, wait a second, this is the beginning of the game. Wait a second. So my first impression of that ending was, it was complicated. It was multi-layered. It was this sense of like grief and betrayal, but not in like, oh, how dare the writers and the directors of this game do this? But it's just like, oh no, like what I did, like it kind of felt like it was for nothing. But it was really well done because the game leads you to that expectation. There are multiple sort of like time loops that happen throughout the game. So like this one isn't patently absurd. So, but it was that sense of grief, sense of confusion, sense of betrayal.
Yeah.
But there is a sense of when you're actually leaving the island on your first playthrough, this sort of weight that's taken off your shoulders, like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't know why, but I had this giant worry throughout the game that I wasn't going to get off the island with everyone.
Yeah.
Like, I really thought I was going to really have to choose somebody to leave behind, and I somehow magically did not. I'll say the ending that I got was the one when Alex and Jonas end up being like best friends.
Yeah.
Ren and Nona started dating. And
What?
Alex and Alex and Clarissa sort of like warm up. They're not like best friends, but they like make up after everything. So what was the ending that you got?
Yeah, so Alex and Clarissa were cool by the end. Everything with Jonas was cool. Ren and Nona, she specifically thought he was disgusting.
Whoa.
I guess he came on a little too strong in my playthrough. That's hilarious. Yeah, but no, what you're talking about, it kind of reminds me of, so I love the TV show Lost.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything about it or anything?
I know vaguely what it's about, and it gets crazy. But I know next to little about it.
Cool. The initial writers of the show, one of them was J.J. Abrams, and he talks about in an interview that there's, he was like, I mean, the reason that NBC was willing to buy into this show is because of the island theory, and it's that no matter what you do with the plot, everything is more interesting and heightened by loneliness. Mm-hmm. So like if there is a feeling of no one's going to know what happened, that like drives the intensity up to 1,000. So he's like, we could do anything we fucking want with the plot of Lost. It doesn't really matter what we do. The main thing is that they're on an island, and no matter what happens, no one's gonna know if they don't get off. And yeah, so sorry that kind of reminded me of that briefly.
No, but that's a gigantic theme in this game, like isolation and loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also like the people that you're stuck with, are you going to put aside your differences to not be lonely, or are you, because like loneliness is the worst thing that you can think of, but what if you have to be lonely with all these people that you don't really like all that much, or that you're not really that close to?
Yeah.
Yes. And also I loved, like absolutely adored the twist at the end where it was like, it kind of hinted towards the fact that like all these different time loops are everyone in the world playing the game at the same time. That was kind of like where it showed the stats of like, well, like 60% of people like chose this like whenever they were done with the game, and 60% of people like did this thing, and like this happened to them, and it was like, wait, they're the other time loops. That was a cool thing for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cleverly done, and the game does an incredible job of just giving you little pieces of food, little pieces of information here and there, just trickling it down, right? So nothing feels unwarranted. But what's interesting is how different these endings can be. And so I did a little bit of research afterwards because, well, after I finished this game, I thought about doing a second playthrough, right? And seeing like what other dialogue options can change. But it felt wrong in the same way because it felt I'm gonna have trouble articulating this, but it felt like betraying my own experience.
Yeah.
Right?
I do in a weird way understand what you're talking about, and I don't really know how to say it either. Yeah, it's something about that, like, whenever you play the game, it's not like, oh, that was a great game, what a fun time. It was like, that was a really great story. I really loved what I was. It's almost like if I was given the option to go back and rewatch a different version of like La La Land, I'm not gonna do that. I like La La Land. Why would I watch La La Land again?
Yeah. It's unless like I can imagine myself playing this game again like much farther down the line, but immediately afterwards I was just like, man, I'm drained.
Yeah.
And so like the story, right? So the big thing playing this game for the first time is that you don't know the story, you don't know what's going to happen. So like every single piece of dialogue is a discovery, right? Is a discovery for the player. But when the player already knows, it feels weird.
And on that note, if you're going to play this game, you cannot, I'm so serious when I say this, you cannot stop halfway through.
No.
You have to carve out time to do the whole thing in one sitting.
Yeah. It's because it's hard to put down.
It's not that long.
No.
Yeah.
I was just dilly-dallying here and there, but probably ended up playing for about 6 hours. Was my playthrough time. I know people
like
can
5,
get it
yeah.
down to like 4 or 5 hours. It's not a long game, and it is kind of designed for multiple playthroughs. And from what I researched, that like the ghosts have different dialogue like say different things to you because they know it's the second playthrough. Right? Like they know you have already gone through this time loop. Of course, the characters do not know.
That's dope.
But there's also one ending that I really want to discuss this. That there is a way to sort of leave the island with and save Michael. To those listening, Michael is the brother of the protagonist, Alex, who died, I think, a year prior to the events of the game. I think who drowned, if I'm not mistaken, at the island. There is a way to get Michael back. But if you get Michael back, that means Alex and Jonas's relationship, which is completely founded by like one of their parents and one of their parents getting together and getting married. Like that's how their relationship starts at the beginning of this game. If Michael stays alive, which is the wedge, Michael's life and death is the wedge between, Alex's parents. That means Alex will never meet Jonas. And so the development between Alex and Jonas, like any possibility of that, is completely gone. And Alex being best friends with Jonas is completely gone. So I wanted to ask you, because this is new information for you. If you were to do a second playthrough, knowing that saving Michael would terminate the relationship between Alex and Jonas, which is deeply explored in this game, would you do it?
Yeah.
Would you save Michael?
That's so much of the game. Oh, I'd say if I was to do another one right now, I'd say that I would be quite a bit more cold to Jonas and opt into Michael.
As a player, right? Just to see dialogue options, or like because you would want to in the story. Does that make sense? Because like from a sort of like receiver of the story, I would not want to save Michael, right? Because losing Michael is what brought Alex to Jonas, right? And so it brings Alex and Jonas closer together in a sort of way. I don't know. Like I think it's super duper important to Alex's development as a character and as a human being to lose Michael. And so Jonas and this island is a way of like also giving her closure, and I don't know, like it feels like it's necessary.
Yeah.
As a player, I may want to explore something different.
That's what I was about to say. Is that I think that I would just want a completely different experience than last time. And so as far away as I can get from the story that I got last time, that's probably what I would opt to do, just to see what the world was like. You know, it would be cool to play it again. Just now knowing where everything is, and so I would have to wander around a lot less. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, and I also want to mention there is an ending. I think you would have to do at least a second playthrough, but it's an ending where Alex, Jonas, and Ren never get to the island. They never leave to go to the island, so the time loop never starts. So that's sort of like a constant motif in this game of the ghost asking and Alex saying leave as possible, like is possible, because they never entered the time loop in the first place. And I love that I'm watching you and your eyes bulge out of your face.
Yeah, because there were certain things that I kind of came to terms with the idea that the game wasn't going to be all that different. I just figured that social aspects of the game would be a lot different. Like if you were to play through it a couple times, or based on your decision making, I figured that the decisions had a lot more to do with relationships than it did with the outcome of the story. I did not even know that my decisions had that much impact on the story. I figured I'd probably end up at the same place every time.
So when you beat the game, you thought that like the only ending was Alex and Jonas being best friends, Ren and Nona not getting together, and Alex making up with Clarissa.
I think mainly just because that was like the stats that I was given at the end, where it was like certain people decided to do this, certain people decided to do this, certain people decided to do this. So I was like, oh well, those are the decisions you're gonna like. That's the outcome of your decisions. Not that like you could potentially not be caught in the time loop, or that Michael's brought back to life, or anything like that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely wasn't under the impression that another playthrough would be an entirely different story, which now I'm a lot more inclined to go back and play it again.
I probably wouldn't say an entirely different story, but it'd be different because as the player you would know, right? Oh shoot, the term is escaping me. I think it's dramatic irony, but it's the fact that you know and the characters do not.
Yes, yeah.
And it provides a completely different lens on, like, one big thing is how I treated the ghosts in my playthrough, right? That, like, it was sort of how I felt about the ghosts at the beginning. It's like, okay, they're interesting. This is, like, a sort of, like, interesting thing we have to deal with. And then the ghosts started to, like, mess with the characters. And, like, my first instinct was, like, okay, I think I need to, like, bargain with the ghosts, right? I need to just, like, give them what they need. Until it eventually does a complete 180 of, like, no, I need to, like, destroy these ghosts. Like, I need to get out of here. If I were to do a second playthrough, I would know the entire time, like, just to not try to bargain with the ghosts at all. Like, it's futile, you know? Or yeah. But there's also an ending where, like, Alex sort of reaching the ghosts is possible. I think if you find enough scattered collectible letters, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong there. It does provide a different light for that second playthrough, but I think what made this game so enchanting for me was me not knowing anything on the first playthrough.
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't say it's like hard emotionally to go back, but it's the perfect time to use the word weird. It'd just be weird to go back, and weird is not the perfect supplemental word to use here. But it would just be weird to go back, and it wouldn't feel the same. Like I said, maybe a year or two down the line. But these characters are so well done, it feels like you're messing with people's lives, you know?
Yeah.
After a quick message from our sponsor, we are going to discuss more about OXENFREE.
All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
All right, welcome back to The Artenders with Mac and Dan. And I wanted to lead this second segment with a question about one theme that really stuck out to me in this game. If you research or if you just look up dissertations or articles or just people discussing the themes of this game, I mean, the big thing that you're gonna look at is isolation, which we discussed in the first segment. But the big theme for me that really resonated on my first playthrough, that I'm surprised such a lack of people are discussing, is closure. So a big thing happens at the end of the game. I imagine you do this in every playthrough, but there's this sort of like flashback. And there are multiple flashbacks throughout the game where you're with your brother Michael.
Yeah.
But in this particular flashback, like, you're helping Michael arrive at giant decisions in his life, whether or not he goes to in-state or out-of-state college, or like whether or not he stays with Clarissa, things like that. But there was some sort of finality in the moment right there that, like, it wasn't a big moment for Michael there. It was, I felt, the biggest moment for Alex in the game. This sense of, like, my brother is gone and maybe I could have done something about it, but even for me playing it, like, I did what I felt was best at the time, and there's nothing essentially wrong with that. And I felt like that flashback, when they're in their house back home, and talking to each other, is such a gigantic moment of closure, not only for the main character, but in a way also for the player, to be like, look, like, Michael is gone, we got to deal with it. And even though it's obviously not great, but now in a weird way, this island has brought this group of people, hopefully in your playthrough, more so together. And it is a sort of capstone on their junior year into senior year, assuming that the time loop doesn't happen,
Yeah.
which the time loop does happen, and it does kind of trivialize all of this, but in not a bad way. So, how did this sort of closure, this theme of closure, sort of resonate with you, Mac?
Yeah, the closure, I feel like pretty much no matter what storyline you go through, it's gonna be about closure in some sort of way. Whether she gets it or doesn't get it, whether she's able to move on to the next chapter of her life with peace or not. So honestly, I think you're right there. Like, I don't really think it's a piece about isolation. I don't think that any piece where there is isolation is going to be about isolation necessarily, because that would be a very boring and silly story. Maybe if you're, like, isolated, it'll be about how, like, you're never actually alone. You know what I mean? But there's, I don't think that there's really many stories I can think of other than, like, existentialism and, like, Waiting for Godot and stuff like that, where it's about you being alone. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's about that, and I think it is about closure. I think that the thing, a really good way to figure out what a story is about is what is the problem, if any, that is introduced in the first 5 minutes, and what happens by the end, what is changed in the protagonist, and that's really the only thing. And based off of all these other potential endings and whatnot that we're talking about, and pretty much every single time it's about Alex's relationship with moving on. And so it's you're I think you're totally right.
And not just moving on.
So screw those other dissertations.
But not just, like, closure and not just, like, moving on from, like, Michael, but also with Clarissa. And so you don't know this on your first playthrough, but the big reason why Clarissa is such an asshole to Alex is because Clarissa was dating Michael when Michael lost his life. And wait, you did not know this? Hold on. You cannot give me those eyes. What do you mean you didn't know? You didn't discover this on your playthrough?
No.
Wait a second. No. What? Hold on.
No.
What do you know about Clarissa on your playthrough?
not that. I just know that she was an asshole.
Yeah.
And then she was.
Did you experience the flashback with Alex, Michael, and Clarissa going to the island together?
No.
What?
No, I didn't.
What?
Was that something you got at the end?
No, this is like at one point throughout the game, you're walking somewhere with Jonas, and all of a sudden you get a flashback, and like Jonas is saying something about like your jacket,
Yeah.
and then Alex is like, "What are you talking about?" And then all of a sudden it's last year, 7 a.m.
Yeah, that's really weird. Do you know how early? I think this might be a big difference. You know how early on?
Yeah.
Well, no. You know how early on there's you come across Clarissa and like you talk to her for a sec and then she like leaves and you're like, where the fuck is Clarissa going?
When she leaves, give me the setting. You have to give me the setting on where that happens, because
I mean,
that kind of happens. At least for me, it happened like multiple times.
Yeah. So I think maybe like the second-ish time that happened to me, we were able to talk her into coming with us.
Oh.
So I think so our getting closer together, it wasn't as much like, oh, we're best friends now. It was just like we're fine, like we're cool because like we were able to like get over our differences, whatever. I never got a flashback, so because I think I was with her sometimes.
Oh my god! Hold on, wait, no. So, okay, let's just go through this. Because we're both discovering stuff about our playthroughs. That
I thought we had
things.
fairly similar playthroughs.
I thought so too.
Not.
Yeah, I didn't know they were this radically different. To such a grand scale. Okay, so things that happen for a fact, right? You and Jonas go into the cave and you activate that signal, right?
Yeah.
And then you get separated from everyone, and it's just you and Jonas.
And you can't get back out of the cave, yeah.
Right. And you get like out of the tower. I'm not out of the tower, but you get to the tower.
You're to the tower, and then you have to get out, and then.
Yeah. But you're able to phone in at one point Ren and Clarissa, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so what I did on my playthrough is I actually went to Clarissa first, because it felt like Ren could kind of handle himself. So went to Clarissa first. She did some crazy things because she was being possessed.
What the fuck?
And jumped out a window at one point, and it looked like she killed herself.
Yes, yeah. I did see that.
So then she dipped, disappeared.
But I went to Ren first.
Like,
yeah, I went to Ren first, and he seemed okay, and so he was willing to come with us for a sec. So he was traveling with us for a while, and then he dipped, and then he just decided to leave, and we were like, "Where are you going, pal?" And then he just disappeared. Like.
Wait, did you not see Nona on the way to Ren?
No.
Oh my god.
Did you see? Oh! Did you see Nona on the way to Ren because you went to Clarissa first?
Maybe. Like, I mean, we don't know because we didn't design this game.
Right.
But I saw Clarissa first, and like the next screen outside of like Ren's screen, like where he was located, Nona was just sitting there and was like, when Alex and Jonas approached, she was like, "Stay back," and Alex and Jonas were like, "Oh, why?" And she was like, "I don't know if it's actually you this time. I've already seen you like 5 times already, and I don't know if this is actually you, so just stay back."
That encounter happened for me later in the game.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that didn't happen. Then that happened later, and that happened because we didn't see Nona for a while. Yeah, we didn't see Nona for a while. Oh, but then once we did, that was the interaction we had.
But then Alex, Jonas, Nona, and Ren are together at the tower, right? That does happen?
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
Yeah, and then Jonas and Ren get into this sort of argument. And then, you have to leave. You have to, I think, go get something from like the town square.
Yeah.
Who did you take with you? Because you can choose between Jonas, Ren, and Nona. Who did you end up taking with?
I took Nona.
And I think that was the big... Okay. So I think that was the big reason why all of a sudden we had dramatically different playthroughs.
You took Jonas, didn't you?
I took Jonas.
Yeah, which is why you think that, like, in your playthrough, so much of the story is about your relationship with Jonas. And why I'm okay with taking Michael.
Whoa, that makes... total complete sense.
Whoa. I didn't realize there were this many different playthroughs.
Because I thought like it'd be like big things that would change, but I didn't realize to how much of a scale things would change on different playthroughs. But that goes to show how well done this game is too. That in my playthrough, the most important relationship in this game to me is between Alex and Jonas. And I think a big reason is because, aside from the fact that you start the game, besides Jonas, I took him when adventuring elsewhere on the island, and so that just deeper dug in to that relationship and to those two and how they interact with one another. So I thought that was such a big thing. But you took Nona, and were you able to get Clarissa to come with you after the fact? Like after that? After you took Nona? It was you and Nona?
Yeah. So,
oh my god.
Yeah, there was Nona, and then everything went pretty normally, it seems like. But then later on, whenever we were able to, whenever we came across Clarissa again, because I don't think by that point I had experienced the Clarissa jumping out of the window yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So Clarissa was, yeah, all the Clarissa stuff happened after.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But
and then specifically your ghost experience.
Right.
So how much information did you have about about either Maggie Adler or about the time loop situation before the ghosts started explaining it to you?
Before the ghosts started to explain, I mean, there were multiple time loops in this game leading up to, I guess, like, the ghosts explaining, right? And so I would have my Alex be like, Jonas, we're in a time loop. Like, just believe me. And then, but, like, it would happen again later on in the game. And then Alex would be like, we're in a time loop again. And Jonas would be like, oh, shit, really? Are we? Because it feels like we're just going through the same thing over and over again.
And you were the only one feeling it, and everyone else was like, what are you talking about? And you're like, do you not feel that when that's happening, right?
Yeah, but then eventually, like, Jonas is on the same page. So it's like, it's nice to be in this sort of same situation with somebody where it's just like, okay, I don't feel like a crazy person. Like, crazy things are happening, but like, we're in together on this, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I was able to figure out a lot because I was able to consistently find letters for the most part. And found out that, like, Maggie Adler, which, to explain, Maggie Adler is a character that you never meet but deeply influential to the game because she's like the only character in the game that knows about the existence of these ghosts and the supernatural elements on this island. So I was able to find a bunch of letters written by Maggie Adler.
One.
Really?
I found one letter, and then I went straight to her house because I remembered where her house was. Because at the very beginning of the game, instead of going to, like, and hopping the fence to go to the caves with them at the very, very beginning,
yeah,
I went straight up to her house because I was trying to get into the house and it wouldn't let me. And so the second I got the letter, I was like, I need to go back to the house. So I did.
Gotcha. But throughout, like, different areas, you could go to, I think it was like channel like 140.1. I think it was, and excuse me, and you would get, like, all of a sudden your radio would feed in, like, the item under the whiskey, Echo, Lima, and you're like, oh, okay, I gotta go to the well, because they would use the NATO alphabet that radios would use. So that's how I found multiple collectibles, and so they give a lot of good information about, like, Maggie and, like, how she found out about this and her relationship to everything on the island and everything going on. But for the ending of the game, I want to ask this because this is a big thing. Because also I think multiple flashbacks happened for me because I had Jonas with me. Excuse me. As opposed to having Nona. So I want to tackle that in just a moment. But, so at the end of the game, I had, like, Clarissa being possessed by the ghosts. And, like, I had to choose between, like, not saving Clarissa and like saving everybody else, or like sacrificing myself to save everybody. Were you confronted with that decision, or was that completely different for you, Clarissa being possessed?
I was confronted with that, but it was not Clarissa. It was Ren.
Ren was being possessed by the ghost at the end of the game for you?
Yeah, and I had to decide between me sacrificing myself, and it was Ren. Yeah.
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Super weird.
Oh.
Super weird. Wait, so does that affect your gold medal?
Yeah. Because my gold medal, it's gonna change every day, I think, when I think about this game. But I think my gold medal, I'm gonna give it to the characters that I felt was done dirty, which is Nona and Clarissa. But hearing about your playthrough, like, it's just my playthrough that I felt like Nona and Clarissa were not explored enough. But I think that was not necessarily the case, because I just picked Jonas both times. Not both times, but like when leaving the tower, I had Jonas, and so that deeply influenced my whole POV on this game and his characters.
That's a big decision, apparently.
Yeah.
Weird.
Because I thought for a fact, I was like, okay, so Mac has had experienced these flashbacks too. You did get the ending flashback with you and Michael in the house, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But not the previous
all the Michael stuff was the
flashbacks,
same.
which is crazy, because that's how I learned about like Clarissa and Alex's like previous relationship and what they were before then. And Clarissa used to be really, really sweet and really, really nice. And so you see this, and like this makes perfect sense, not perfect sense, but like a big factor as to why like she does not feel the same way about Alex anymore.
Right.
Yes, but it's deeply, deeply influential, that decision, in how you view the rest of the game and his characters and his relationship. But I think it's a gigantic testament to how this game is constructed, because I feel like your gold medal may very well, if it's not different, it's going to be for wholly different reasons.
Yeah. My gold medal, funny enough, actually probably goes to Ren. There were a lot of times where I like actively laughed out loud to things that Ren was saying. He was a very, very, very funny character.
The acting is incredible.
Yeah, really though, Ren's voice actor. That's who I'm actually giving the gold medal to, is Ren's voice actor. Yeah, that's probably
There was such a great sense of play that actor exhibited, and it read so clear. It read so clear when playing through the game.
I do wish though that I maybe would have gone through the Jonas experiences, because it was cool, and it was interesting to do that, but there wasn't a lot of relationship progression between Alex and Nona. Mm-hmm. That wasn't really super touched on. You just kind of learned about Nona's relationships with Clarissa and Ren, but you didn't really get close to Nona. So I wish that I would have picked someone that I got closer to, because I think I would have been a little more invested long term in the game. It was still a fantastic game, but I think that was a big difference maker.
That's fair. And also, I think because I took Jonas with me, that left Ren and Nona in the tower, right? And Ren and Nona together. Yeah. And I think that was a big factor as to what like blossomed their relationship. And I remember like Ren asking Alex, like, hey, like, did you talk to Nona? And I said, yeah, but like you shouldn't, but Ren was like, so then I should go for it. And Jonas is like, yeah, go for it, buddy. So I was like, oh, okay. And it's also awesome how in this game, like, you don't have to respond. You don't have to respond with a dialogue option. Like, you can choose to remain silent, which is its own dialogue option.
Yeah. And I didn't figure that out for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, that was like near the end of the game, because I was so pressured, because it was like starting to fade, and every single time I'd be like, and I would just pick something really fast. But yeah, I didn't even realize.
There was I'm gonna read you something in a moment, but before I get to that, because I'm sure you didn't know about this secret, because I felt like I found out this secret just like, wait a second, let me try this, and it worked. But I want to get into your sizzle serve as I look this up. So go ahead.
Oh, my sizzly serve is that I thought there was a bit too much wandering around. Like the difference between like a game like Super Mario and a game like Skyrim for me is that there's a lot more payoff in Skyrim, but there's a lot more wandering around. Whenever you get to the end of a Mario level, you go directly to the next piece of action.
Right.
And for this, it was almost wholly dependent on the voice actors to draw you in, and I think that was a problem for me. It bothered me that there was so much wandering around, and also very little direction. And I liked being able to make my own decisions, but there were some times where I was like, I don't really know if I have the information to make this decision, so I'm just going to be picking random stuff, and that kind of bothers me.
I see what you're saying. And it's just like, sometimes like I went to the wrong area, but like just to see something, just to see if something was different when something happened in the game. But like it takes so long to get there, and it takes so long to get back, and it's just like, damn it, like this was like all for naught. And when you're doing those sort of like random explorations, like in a real world, like the characters would still be talking with one another. And it's funny because we've been praising the sort of the writing in this game so far. And there's as we just really discovered now, there's a lot of dialogue that was recorded for this game. But when you're just wandering technically to an area where you're not supposed to, just silence, just no dialogue at all, period. And it's like, damn, man, like just a little bit, just a little like, just banter. Like I just wish there was just a little bit more banter, because those are actually moments where it's like it feels really lonely and it feels like a video game, as opposed to like I'm experiencing the story.
Right. And I think that's actually where Skyrim does like a really good job. And no, I'm using Skyrim as just an example because that's just a really, really good game that functions in the same way. But what's awesome about that game is that it does take a really long time to get from place to place, from like one point of the map to across the other side. But what's awesome about it is that there's always adventures along the way. There's always people on the roads and crazy shit you can get yourself into. That is just not the case here. So if you're not doing if you're not doing anything that is one of the storylines, then you're doing nothing. And that's kind of problematic. Now, what were you gonna say? What was your?
So when I discovered it, I thought to myself, Mac is probably not going to discover this. So remember how like when accessing those channels at the very beginning of the at the very beginning of the game, in front of the cave, there are like stacks of these rocks, right?
Yeah.
Throughout different areas of the game, there are stacks of rocks, just tiny little rocks. So if you stand right next to them and you tune in with your radio to a certain channel, you're able to hear all these different anomalies. And they're just like weird messages that they may be incorporated into something, I don't know, but this is, but we're also talking like this is just straight off of our first playthrough and straight off of our immediate impressions and immediate experiences with this game. But yeah, you're able to tune into these anomalies. You're able to tune into like these weird sort of dispatches that happen at these rocks. And like some of them are just, it just feels weird. Like one of them is like a woman's voice. You just hear, Teddy also registered images on objects, places, and persons on magnetic tape, taking into consideration the impossibility of and then static interference. But the one that I wanted to read to you that was just terrifying, that I yelled out audibly, quoting, "What the fuck?" was you turn into one outside of the bomb shelter door. And it says, "The island is famously named after Colonel Caleb Edwards for his glorious and triumphant slaughtering of countless families during one of the great ethnic cleansings of the 20th century. The forceful removal of an ignorant people to make space for destined holders is a time-honored tradition in our still young country. You will be a part of that heritage, Alex. Do not resist. It will be over soon."
What the shit? That is so weird.
I freaked out. Because all of these anomalies are just weird frequencies that are happening, but this is like the one that's directly being addressed to Alex, and I got spooked.
Whoa. And you found that while you were playing?
While I was playing the game. Yeah. I wasn't like actively searching for these, but once I noticed one, then I kept noticing these little rocks, because I was like, wait a second, this looks like the stuff outside of the cave. Let me just to mess with it. Let me just go up to it and tune in with my radio, and it started doing stuff like that, and I'm like, I gotta see more of this. So there's like, but the issue with these, and it's the beautiful thing in the issue, is that it feels like for those, the discovery is only for the player, right? Like Alex doesn't remark about any of them. Like even the one that I just read, she doesn't say out loud about any of them. It's just for the player. So it once again, it feels more like a video game, and this game did a really good job for so much of it not feeling like a video game. So when the game allows that dead air, it hurts. Like it hurts the sort of experience of this game. Man,
that is interesting. Holy crap.
At one point though, I'm gonna want to do a second playthrough, and that is for sure, because now it feels like I'm only scratching the surface.
Yeah, right. Like pretty much this entire episode has just been us being like, wait, what? Because I had expectations or I had made assumptions about this game that were just wholly false.
Yeah.
So holy crap. So okay, so in summation, what is your takeaway of this game?
As I said, this was not the most important thing that we've reviewed so far. I would say the most important thing that we reviewed would be I Am Not Your Negro. But of all the things that we've consumed, this has by far been my favorite. A big thing because of that is just the acting, I think, is some of the best that we've seen. I'm going to say that. And how the story is told is fantastic, because it keeps the player out of the loop for so much of it for so long, and so it feels scary in a disturbing way. But every time you make a discovery in this game, you're like, oh man, what about this, what about this, what about this, and your mind starts racing, and you feel incredibly invested in these characters, so invested in these characters and the stories that they're telling and who they are, and you want to do the best for these characters, because this game does an incredible job of making the characters feel like people for the vast majority of the game. And each player's experience, for the most part, would be completely unique to their own, which is just so sweet. And I love stories like that, because it's more of a personal experience as opposed to one that just everybody has. But with these sort of conversations, even though us two players, we had these two different experiences, it brought us closer to understanding and appreciating the game, of discovering with each other, like, oh, so this is what the game is capable of. This is what we discovered. This is what we can do. And so it really taps into what storytelling could truly be, in this medium. And I love it, and I can't help but recommend it. I don't recommend it playing on the phone, because it deserves a bigger screen.
Agreed.
But just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. What do you think?
I agree with you on pretty much everything you just said. I really wish that I really wish that he would play it on a larger screen. I also big time wish that it'd be cool if sometimes whenever you were interacting with people, like every once in a while, you would see another person online and on a different part of the world that's playing through the game, also playing through the game. Like that'd be like if you got later in the story and you saw another Alex and Jonas walk past you that has like a little flag that says like Finland or something, and you're like, holy shit, that's someone from Finland. That's in a different time loop. That's me, right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can be explored there. But in terms of storytelling, I mean, absolutely fantastic. And that's something that's been really tricky for a lot of video games in the past. But this narrative storytelling type of video game experience, I think is something that should definitely be that should be explored, and should definitely be explored on the phone and app level. Like, to not have to buy so hard into it, because like video games for like consoles, like from 20 to like 60 to $100, that's crazy. That's absolutely insane.
But these indie games, yeah. Like this isn't a phone experience game, but you don't need a fantastic story to be $60.
Yeah, exactly. And fantastic stories in movie form or TV form on your phone go for like $3, $4, $5, $6. So like, just pay that much and make it more of a story than a graphically impressive game. Just get really good voice actors and tell us a good story, and this is a really good way to do it. Yeah, I think they're onto something, and this should be explored.
Yeah,
even more.
I cried.
Really?
I did, yeah. No, I cried at the end because I mean, for me, it was like the closure. It was the closure of Michael. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, brother sister stuff really
resonates.
Hits home. Oh yeah.
All right, Mac. Ooh, what are we gonna review next week?
Oh, you know we're reviewing, baby. I'm going to make you watch the third book of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
All right, good thing I'm already halfway done. All right, guys. Thank you for listening.
Yes!
Thank you for listening to The Artenders, and thank you, Mac, for joining.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.